This story will tell about a high school boy named Asado Sada who has a very strong sense of justice and often conducts small investigations into small pranks that frequently occur at school, and comes across the newly appointed school nurse named Igou Nemu. Nemu-sensei is admired by so many people at school because of her beauty, but she has a curt attitude towards everyone. However, when Asado learns Nemu's secret, Nemu-sensei then invites him to come to the girl's house. Asado is at the mercy of Nemu, who has a sweet attitude that Asado doesn't show during the day, but there is an even more important secret in that room. Asado Sada is a student who has recently been going back and forth to the teacher's room to report various pranks happening at school, starting from a running faucet on full blast, a vandalized portrait, to a false fire alarm. Asado came to face the teacher to report that their school has a serious mischief problem. They should find who's behind all that sense. Asado feels that there are all pretty serious nuisances there, but unfortunately, the teachers there do not really care. Instead of getting a solution, Asado instead gets the impression that he himself is the ally of justice in the eyes of the teacher. Those little pranks seem trivial to the teachers, but in Asado's eyes, they escalated into major problems. Although Asado had tried to explain his perspective on the matter, the boy was worried by his teacher because of his background, who had just become an orphan. Asado suddenly had to live alone, so it was normal for the boy to feel emotionally unsettled. Instead of providing a solution to the problem Asado had asked about, the teacher instead suggested that the boy go and talk to the school nurse. Asado and the school nurse live in the same apartment building. This fact makes many people jealous of Asado, who lives in the same neighborhood as the famously beautiful school nurse. Asado is fed up with not being listened to, but of course he can't vent his frustration on his teacher, so the boy chooses to leave. Asado's departure from the teacher's room makes the teachers interested in talking about the main topic of Asado Sada. Asado is a first-year student at their school. Asado is still relatively new as a student there, but according to the teachers, the boy is already sticking out like a sore thumb in lessons. Asado is quick to call out even the smallest spelling mistakes. The teachers try to justify Asado's behavior because it is known that Asado has just lost both of his parents suddenly. His mental state is considered unstable. Asado went to the infirmary. He paused for a moment at the front door. Asado realized that he and the school nurse at his school lived in the same building but had never really spoken. The school nurse was named Igou Nemu. As Asado was about to enter the infirmary, he saw two other students, the delinquents inside, and one of them was trying to flirt with Nemu-sensei. Igou Nemu was a beautiful and mysterious figure, the heartthrob of the entire school. Asado remained silent, watching how one of the students inside seemed very insistent on approaching Nemu-sensei, and even trying to get permission to visit the girl's apartment. Nemu-sensei herself gave an indifferent attitude that didn't care but still responded. After being there for too long, Asado broke up the two while telling Nemu-sensei loudly that he needed some advice from Nemu-sensei. Unexpectedly, neither of them received a response from Nemu-sensei. Both the student who tried to approach the girl and Asado were rejected with the alibi that the girl was busy. None of his attempts worked, but from the reactions of the two previous students, it could be seen that Asado had completely forgotten about a popular student at their school who lived in the same building as Nemu-sensei. Asado was then greeted by a student who tried to approach Nemu-sensei. The young man was Asado's senior, so Asado called him senpai. The arrival then asked about personal things concerning Nemu-sensei, such as how the girl dressed casually at home, or whether the walls of Asado's apartment were thin enough to hear Nemu-sensei's voice from her apartment. Hearing these questions made Asado respond sarcastically about how his senior apparently had creepy hobbies. Because of this sarcastic response, Asado ended up receiving a kick from his annoyed senpai. That night, Asado was still thinking about what had happened at school that afternoon. He wondered why no one cared about the incidents that had occurred at school. Asado was so concerned about these small things because his current lifestyle required him to be able to handle various problems well. Asado had started his life alone. He chose a suburban school where there was no one to lean on or rely on. That was why Asado always had the feeling that he had no choice but to handle things on his own. Remembering that he was alone, Asado suddenly thought that Nemu-sensei was in the building downstairs. He stopped thinking and decided to patrol the school again the next day after class. Asado was on patrol as he had intended the night before. He felt he was the only hope for fixing the school's problems. Asura was determined to catch the perpetrator and stop this deviant behavior. However, he also had a vested interest in who the perpetrator really was. It was then that Asura, passing by the corridor where the fire alarm was located, saw Nemu-sensei, who appeared to be about to pull the alarm. Asura stared wide-eyed and was stunned for a moment. He then stepped forward and asked what exactly Nemu-sensei was doing. There was nothing that required Nemu-sensei to sound the fire alarm because the school was fine at that time. Not a single corner of the school was on fire. Nemu-sensei remained silent. Asura approached, not believing why the girl did that. Asura emphasized that what Nemu-sensei did at that time was wrong. Instead of self-reflection and introspection, Nemu-sensei confirmed that what she did was wrong. However, because what she did was wrong, that's why Nemu-sensei chose to continue doing it, because of the exciting sensation she got. Asura was silent and tried to understand how Nemu-sensei thought, but it still didn't make sense to the young man. Nemu-sensei, who saw Asura just silent, thought that the young man didn't understand what he was saying. The girl explained that it's exciting because they are not supposed to do it. For example, the situation they were facing at that time. Nemu-sensei approached Asura. Their faces were now not even an inch apart. Asura was silent, confused. The exciting situation that Nemu-sensei meant was if a teacher and student were doing something like that, of course. It was a situation that was totally forbidden. Nemu-sensei asked if what was happening to them at that time managed to make Asura's heart race. Asura remained silent. Nemu-sensei then continued to tease him by asking if the young man had ever kissed. The girl even said that she could give Asura one of her special kisses. Nemu-sensei pushed Asura to the floor. Now the young man was right under Nemu-sensei. Nemu-sensei said with her own mouth at that time that she was offering Asura a rare opportunity. Asura could be given the chance to experience something that the whole school dreamed of, also with a special person who was a figure admired by the whole school. Nemu-sensei added that Asura could tell his friends about his experience. It might give her a sense of superiority over Asura, but the girl was also curious about what Asura would get if they found out. Would Asura get face detention or even expelled from school? She also wanted to know if it could cause serious problems. Such a thrilling opportunity won't come again for Nemu-sensei. Nemu-sensei again asked what Asura would do. Asura remained silent. The young man knew full well that the situation was completely wrong, but he remained stunned by his strange feeling. How could he, in a situation like that, where it was so clearly his fault, feel his heart pounding because of Nemu-sensei? Asura felt like he had never seen such a genuine smile directed at him before. Asura tried to recover from the situation. Nemu-sensei thought Asura was still steadfast in his role as a figure who stood firm in the truth. Nemu-sensei then asked if Asura would tell anyone what Nemu-sensei did to him. Asura simply replied that his actions would depend on the situation. Nemu-sensei invited Asura to come to her apartment, but Asura refused. The young man preferred to keep an eye on Nemu-sensei as best as possible. During his observation, Asura only saw Nemu-sensei's usual expression. He began to think that her previous smile was just his imagination. Nemu-sensei invited him back to her apartment, and this time, Asura didn't refuse. Their apartment building looked quite old. A budget apartment complex is barely standing. They said zombies dwelled in the nearby woods because of that. Nemu-sensei welcomed Asura. Asura himself was silent for a moment because he never thought that he would be invited by the school's belle. However, that didn't mean the young man hadn't thought about it, especially since they lived in the same building. At home, Nemu-sensei seemed like a very caring and loving teacher. Asura also had the opportunity to see Nemu-sensei in casual clothes. When he entered the young man's apartment, he was even more surprised because the condition of the room was really messy, even though the girl had moved in a month ago. Asura thinks that the situation in Nemu-sensei's apartment is very chaotic, but the girl herself doesn't think so. For Nemu-sensei, what she feels must be the same as other humans, where they will feel a thrill from doing wrong. Everyone is just surprising it with common sense. Nemu-sensei wants to know if Asura is a different boy. Before continuing the conversation, Asura asks Nemu-sensei to stop calling him boy, because his name is Asura Sada. The two then sat together, accompanied by a cup of tea each. Asura came to warn his teacher not to act is for the future. The sentences were neatly arranged, but only reached the young man's mind. Before he could say his words, Nemu-sensei took the young man's hand and placed it on Nemu-sensei's large chest. The girl wanted Asato to feel how fast her heart was beating there. Asato was still confused by the girl's actions, but Nemu-sensei said that until that moment and in that place, even that moment, there had not been anything that could make Nemu-sensei feel happy. The girl firmly said that Asato had someone who reached out to her first. Now she felt so excited because she had never experienced that before. Therefore, Nemu-sensei thought the young man could be his savior. Nemu-sensei asked if Asato would save him. Asato was confused by Nemu-sensei's words. She then explained it again. Igou Nemu is a girl who has always lived a carefree life, with no one there to correct her for her wrongdoings. Both her parents and everyone who met Nemu-sensei always ended up spoiling her. The excitement of misbehaving kind of turned into an addiction. Even though the girl is now a grown woman, she remains powerless to change on her own. Asato listened, silent and stunned. Their situations were almost the same. Now he also knew the reason behind Nemu-sensei's attitude and behavior. For both of them, no one could come and help them. In the end, the only path left was to hold fast to the only principle they had. The path of ruin was all that was left for them. Although their paths were very opposite, to be honest, they were not that different after all. Nemu-sensei, who had always felt trapped in a world filled with sweet talk, felt like he had found a treasure when he met Asato. Only he had found her and held her hand. Nemu-sensei honestly admitted that he could never stop making mistakes and causing trouble, so he felt it was important for Asato to be by his side. Once again, the girl asked if Asato would help her. Asato is confident that he can fix it. Nemu-sensei, therefore, agrees that he will save Nemu-sensei. Asato will save Nemu-sensei if she promises to him to reach out to him whenever Nemu-sensei feels like causing mischief from now on. Asato promises that he will stop Nemu no matter what. The boy swears on his sense of justice. Suddenly, Nemu-sensei kisses Asato's cheek. The girl agrees, and they have finally started their secret relationship. Asato honestly felt a bit hesitant, but as far as he was concerned, despite her quirky nature, her troublemaking had been minor so far. For now, what mattered most was how she opened up about her issues, only to Asato. Asato had no right to forbid Nemu-sensei from relying on others, but he still wanted him to be that person. As long as he could consistently hold her back, he would likely stop her mischievous ways. With this decision, Asato now felt that his school life would become more peaceful, and his presence in Nemu-sensei's life would be more justified. Asato then suddenly stopped in his tracks. If Asato was always with Nemu, then it was certain that the young man would no longer be able to deny that he had fallen in love with Nemu-sensei because her genuine, joyful smile had won Asato over. Asato began to think about justice and position, but in between his thoughts, as he was enjoying a cup of tea while looking at Nemu-sensei, felt that his heart was beating fast. That day, there were so many expressions displayed by Nemu-sensei. Asato finished his drink and decided to clean up the rest of their mess. Asato wondered where he could get a trash bag. Nemu remained silent, enjoying her tea and social media. The boy felt like she had forgotten something important, but he chose not to think about it any further. Nemu-sensei told the young man that the trash bag was in the bathroom, and as soon as Asato opened the bathroom door, a half-body figure was seen lying face down without a lower body. Asato faintly remembered that the half-body figure was the same figure who had tried so hard to seduce Nemu-sensei a few days earlier. While Asato was still stunned, Nemu-sensei was next to him. Asato was trembling silently. Nemu-sensei appeared from behind, hugging him, happy to see Asato's expression and reaction. The young man remained silent, not shouting or raising his voice. Asato himself was actually at a loss for what was happening and what Nemu-sensei was trying to do. Asato wanted to know what the girl had actually done. Nemu-sensei replied that she had no other choice at that time. The night before, Asato's upperclassmen suddenly appeared at Nemu-sensei's window. The young man claimed to have followed Nemu-sensei to get there. The young man's actions were blamed on Nemu, whose charm had messed up the young man's feelings. Nemu was nearly attacked, but nearby, she saw a box cutter lying within reach. Neither Nemu nor the young man had any normal behavior. When Nemu-sensei regained consciousness, the young man had been torn apart, unable to move or make a sound. The story was quite unreasonable for Asato, but there was nothing he could use to doubt it. Asato instead thought about Nemu-sensei, who had just been through such a horrific event. A normal person would be unable to speak out of fear, but it was still so clear to Asato's ears when Nemu-sensei asked if Asato would save her. Asato felt tense. It was all too late. There was a slight regret that he hadn't noticed the little prank just now. If only he had, he could have prevented it, or at least stayed on the right path without crossing the line. If Nemu-sensei's situation were to be known to the school, she would no longer be able to come to school, and if that happened, they would never be able to meet. Asato apologized for failing to prevent Nemu-sensei from doing so. However, Asato felt something was odd. He then asked the reason why Nemu-sensei invited him to her apartment that day. Why did Nemu-sensei not prevent Asato from opening the bathroom door at all? All of Nemu-sensei's behavior showed that the girl was actually intentional and wanted to tell Asato about what she had done. Asato now truly understood. Nemu-sensei cracked a smile, and suddenly in the silence the doorbell rang, signaling someone had arrived. Asato grew even more tense. Who could be coming so late? Suspicion after suspicion flashed through Asato's mind. Perhaps it was his senpai's colleague who had died, or it could be a group of police officers. The situation was very wrong. He and Nemu-sensei had a teacher-student relationship. It would be unethical to know that they were alone in an apartment. It would be a problem if they were caught red-handed. While Asato was lost in thought, Nemu-sensei moved to open the door. Asato tried to restrain her, saying that there were so many things that shouldn't be seen by others. Nemu-sensei only grew more enthusiastic. She wanted to see how her guest would react if they saw what she had done. Asato grew increasingly nervous. Why did this girl enjoy doing so many dangerous things? There was only one reason why Nemu-sensei did it. It was because it excited her. Asato took over. He went to the door to see who it was. It turned out to be a deliveryman. The courier needed the owner's signature. Asato handled the matter until the courier left. The tense atmosphere had passed. Nemu-sensei greeted him with a smile. What she had just experienced was so exciting, especially since Asato had managed to stop her and protect her. Asato couldn't help but laugh in surprise, seeing that Nemu, instead of being afraid, was enjoying the situation. Nemu handed Asato a pair of gloves. She was so sure that the young man would help her clean up the mess he had caused. In fact, a package they had just received contained the equipment they would use to clean up the corpse in the bathroom. Asato stepped forward first, but the young man froze slightly in front of his upperclassman's cold body. Nemu-sensei told Asato to close his eyes if the young man was worried. Nemu then guided Asato's hand to work on cleaning the corpse. His eyes were closed, and his hand was directed to stab. The girl kept asking Asato to stab deeper, without Asato himself knowing what he was actually stabbing. After the incident, Asato returned to his apartment to rest. In his reverie, he thought and realized that Nemu really wanted excitement. However, he was a little doubtful whether it was okay to look for excitement even if it meant doing something dangerous. In Asato's mind, it was only self-destructive. However, Asato also felt that he was not much different. Just to prove the truth, he tended to always seek out bad people because it was the only way he could maintain his identity. However, with today's incident, Asato began to feel that he no longer needed to do that anymore. Asato then remembered that that very day, he and Nemu-sensei had agreed to a secret relationship. The young man was only able to think rationally because he was so shocked by the presence of a corpse in the girl's bathroom. All he could think now was that the secret relationship they had agreed to that day was only because Nemu-sensei was pushed into a corner. Asato felt that he was the only person Nemu-sensei could rely on, so if he didn't stay by her side, she would definitely instantly destroy her life. With Asato's head full of various events that happened last night, the young man couldn't close his eyes for even a second until morning came. Asato went to school as usual, and when he arrived, he accidentally met Nemu-sensei, but the girl just passed by as if nothing had happened between them at all. Honestly, Asato was also happy when he saw the girl looked normal and unaffected by what had happened last night. But Asato was quite disappointed because when he tried to greet Nemu-sensei, the girl ignored him. Being ignored by Nemu-sensei and not getting a sweet smile from the girl anymore made Asato completely unable to concentrate in class. Asato thought back to everything he had done when he visited Nemu-sensei's apartment last night. After thinking about it for a moment, he realized that none of his actions were right. He was no longer sure whether he was still a person who stood up for the truth or not. While these thoughts haunted his head, Asato also continued to imagine the figure of Nemu-sensei smiling at him. Everything that was bothering him now made him so frustrated that he finally realized something was wrong in class. As usual, Asato reprimanded his teacher, Yurishibara-sensei, for making a mistake on the blackboard while the teacher was teaching. Asato did not hesitate to correct it and asked his teacher to do it correctly. The teacher admitted the mistake and realized that Asato had become more sensitive that day. After that, they continued the lesson. When class was over, Asato was about to leave, and a girl, the class president, wanted to talk to him. The girl's name was Katori. Katori tried to talk, but Asato didn't respond and left. Asato just wanted validation that he had done the right thing, not the wrong thing. He wanted to make sure and went to meet Nemu-sensei in the infirmary room, but when he got there, he was shocked to see his dead senpai's friend in Nemu-sensei's apartment talking to the girl to ask where his friend had gone. The young man wanted to know if Nemu-sensei was involved or knew where his friend had gone. Nemu-sensei hadn't answered. Asato was quite worried, but he felt confident that there wasn't a single piece of evidence that could lead them to conclude that Nemu-sensei was the one behind the incident. Asato was sure that his senpai came to Nemu-sensei just because of a random thought. He was sure Nemu-sensei could handle the situation, but something strange was lying near Asato's feet. The object was a bone. Asato immediately looked at Nemu-sensei, and what he saw was the girl's smiling expression that hinted at a question like whether Asato would stop him this time too. The young man in the hoodie felt that Nemu-sensei had dropped something. He asked to make sure. Asato, who was in the doorway, rushed over to get involved even though it was honestly none of Asato's business to interfere. Nemu-sensei appeared to be displaying a facial expression that was very excited about what was happening in front of her. Last night at Nemu-sensei's apartment, Asato felt something sweet in the air, but he didn't know what it was or whether it was just his own thoughts. Before Asato could push the hoodie-wearing senpai away from Nemu-sensei, Yurishibara-sensei appeared and picked up the bone. Yurishibara-sensei said confidently that it was just a replica of a bone model. Nemu-sensei confirmed Yurishibara-sensei's words. Asato realized, and he was a little relieved, that the bone was just a little prank. Yurishibara-sensei argued that, despite being a replica, the bone truly looked like the real thing. He also expressed his appreciation for Nemu-sensei, who had used such a bone replica for her work in the infirmary. The increasingly lively interaction led the student with the hoodie to leave on his own. Only the three of them remained in the infirmary: Yurishibara-sensei, Nemu-sensei, and Asato. Yurishibara thought that Asato might be feeling unwell and had gone to the infirmary. Therefore, Yurishibara-sensei chose to leave, leaving Asato and Nemu-sensei alone. Before leaving, Yurishibara-sensei advised that the delinquents were indeed quite persistent, so Nemu-sensei could rely on Yurishibara-sensei if she needed help. Hearing this offer made Nemu-sensei nervous. Asato came to his senses. He then demanded an answer as to why Nemu-sensei had ignored Asato's greeting that morning. Nemu-sensei held out her hand and, with a pleading expression, replied that it was because she wanted Asato's attention. Asato was stunned. His cheek was stroked by Nemu-sensei, who found Asato to be cool yet sometimes adorable. She said she wanted to see all sides of him. Asato remained silent, feeling the sweetness in the air once again. Nemu-sensei wanted Asato to call her by her first name, Nemu. Nemu-sensei reminded him that they were in a secret relationship. These words reassured Asato that what happened yesterday was real. He wasn't wrong. Nemu-sensei took the initiative to reconcile and suggested they play a game. Asato wanted to know what game she would propose. Nemu admitted she had prepared the game for Asato. Nemu-sensei invited Asato to participate in a treasure hunt at school. The girl's expression was cheerful as she held the replica of the bone Asato had found earlier. Asato was confused by the game's purpose. Nemu-sensei explained that the game would last until the school bell rang. Asato hinted that the treasure he had to find was the home of that bone. Asato remained confused, but Nemu-sensei smiled and said he would know when he found it. Nemu also held a blood-stained dagger, which Asato saw. Asato began to overthink. He assumed that Nemu-sensei might have hidden the corpse from last night somewhere in the school. Nemu-sensei wasn't sure if the game would be exciting enough, so she added a reward. If Asato managed to find it, Nemu would listen to anything Asato asked. The only one who has caught Nemu's deviant behavior red-handed, the only one who knows her true self, is Asato. Nemu wants to know more about her. Nemu asks Asato to find out more about her. Asato rushes off to begin his treasure hunt. Asato wandered around, looking everywhere until Nemu-sensei laughed at him for looking so cute like a doggy. Asato was a little annoyed to hear that. At least if Nemu-sensei didn't want to tell him where the treasure was, at least she should have helped him. The hints Asato had received were too few, not even very helpful at all. If Nemu-sensei was referring to a place where the model skeleton belonged, then this should be the place, the infirmary room. But in fact, until then, Asato hadn't found anything. Asato couldn't find anything, and the organized equipment was a mess. He was starting to feel like Nemu-sensei was really playing with him. It was already 4:00 p.m., and Nemu-sensei reminded Asato that they only had about an hour and a half left before the time limit. The girl also seemed quite happy when she assumed they didn't have enough time to finish the game. She wanted to know what Asato wanted Nemu-sensei to do if he managed to win the game. Nemu-sensei's questions and curiosity were not wrong, but for Asato, who was in a hurry, it wasn't the right time to talk much. Seeing Asato seem quite panicked made Nemu-sensei smile and suggest something else. What if they ended their secret relationship? If it ended, they would have to expose everything. Besides, the girl was also sure that in the future, she would do even more awful things. The girl also seemed to assume that Asato was actually just feeling threatened if they were caught red-handed. Nemu-sensei asked Asato to imagine a situation where the young man simply ignored all the troubling stuff and just stayed away from her. Watch her fall as he is filled with a sense of superiority. Nemu-sensei really wanted to know what Asato really wanted to do. Asato turned around and grabbed Nemu-sensei's hand with one hand. The young man said that he had promised Nemu-sensei that Asato would stop her and that he was someone who never told lies. Asato rushed out of the infirmary room to search for the treasure in question. Seeing Asato's behavior made Nemu-sensei amazed at how cute the young man was. She also left the infirmary. In front of the infirmary door, Yoshibara-sensei was seen holding back a student wearing a hoodie who was about to enter. As Asato was rushing to find the treasure in question, he suddenly fell down the stairs after hitting something. The person he hit was the student wearing a hoodie. The hoodie-wearing senior seemed pissed. He couldn't find his friend anywhere. He asked Asato, who remained silent. Seeing no answer, the hoodie-wearing senior landed a kick on Asato's small body. Asato, who had just gotten up, fell back to the floor. Asato's mind began to overthink again, as his senpai shouldn't have known he was suspicious. While Asato was still confused about what kind of logic his senpai was using, he concluded that if things got complicated, resorting to violence could be a solution to speed things up. Asato was increasingly confused by what was happening to him. He wondered aloud as his senior continued to hit him. Why was Nemu-sensei playing a game that would involve her life and death? Why did she seem so happy about it? And how long would this last? Honestly, Asato wanted her to give up. Asato was starting to hesitate. While Asato remained silent, his hoodie-wearing senior began to lose his patience. He just wanted the truth. Asato rebelled and shouted that he had a policy of not lying because lies would fall apart after all. Hearing this, the hoodie-wearing senior left. Nemu-sensei witnessed the incident but remained silent. Asato got up and hurried off to finish his game. However, before the young man could leave, Katori tried to talk to him again. Katori called out to Asato, worried that he looked like he was hurt. Asato turned around to look but then ignored him and was about to leave. This time, Katori was more persistent and insisted that Asato go with her to the infirmary. Aru Katori, for Asato, was a very caring class president, but he couldn't afford any distractions. Asato replied that he was fine and that she didn't need to worry about him. Katori didn't let go of Asato. The young man struggled and shouted at the girl to leave him alone, not to worry about him. Asato warned Katori to think about her position as the class president, where she doesn't need to force herself to help others or be so kind. Asato was sure that what he did was right, but Rai didn't waver. The girl told Asato not to just assume. Katori honestly felt that way, and it had nothing to do with her position. The thing is, no matter what anyone says about Asato, Asato is still doing his best for the school. And because of that, Katori wants to support him. Katori really wants to do that. Besides that, there are personal reasons underlying it. How Asato tried to remind Katori of her older brother so clearly, Katori couldn't let Asato. Katori's words had opened Asato's heart and mind. Asato then apologized for his uneasy behavior. Now he could kind of understand why Katori was so dependable as president. Katori didn't really care about it, as the most important thing for her right now was to get to the infirmary and treat Asato's wounds. Nearby, Nemu-sensei watched all the events silently. The girl was a little displeased with the way the game was going, especially with what Asato was doing. If Asato didn't make Nemu-sensei feel excited about the game, then the game would no longer be fun. In the infirmary, both Katori and Asato were silent and boisterous in their respective victories. Katori, who was wondering where Nemu-sensei had gone as the person in charge of the infirmary, remained silent while treating Asato's wounds. Asato himself was also silent and observing the surroundings, namely the infirmary, which was currently different from when he left it earlier. The skeleton property isn't there. Asato thought maybe he had found Sensei put it away. Shortly after, they finally talked about Asato knowing who was behind the small pranks at their school. Although Asato knew this, it didn't solve the problem. They knew that the small pranks wouldn't stop, even though the perpetrators had been asked to stop. Asato also admitted that he couldn't provide details, but he was persuading them now. Hearing this, Katori became even more convinced that Asato was a model student. The girl was now willing to help Asato if he needed her help in the future. Asato does everything for the sake of a peaceful school life. If there is something he can do, then Asato will do it totally. Asato then asked Katori if the girl knew where the big skeleton property was placed. According to Katori, the object is definitely not in the biology room because the first year doesn't have any biology classes yet. She guesses it's natural if they don't know. Hearing this made Asato very surprised because it turned out he had been looking in the wrong place all this time. Katori had also heard from the graduates that they used a life-sized doll for that. Apparently, they only recently used large ones. If they were going to place one somewhere, maybe a storage room or an empty classroom would do. Maybe the materials room. Based on Katori's assumption, Asato moved on and ended up finding the House of the Bones, the treasure hidden in the treasure hunt game that day. Suddenly, Nemu-sensei appeared behind Asato, who had just finished his game. Naturally, Nemu-sensei's sudden appearance surprised Asato. The girl complimented Asato, calling him a cool person. Nemu-sensei also stated that to make it more exciting, one more person would join the game.